Hi, third grade. Today in reading, we're going to go on a text evidence scavenger hunt. So how this is going to work is I'm going to give you clues to focus your reading. You're going to want to read the clues in the student template before you read chapter 7. So I'm going to show you how to do this activity with chapter 6, but then it's super important that you're doing this activity in chapter 7. So the read aloud for today is Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, chapter 7. But I'm going to be showing you how to do the scavenger hunt with chapter 6, which you should have already read last week. So I'm going to give you the clues to focus your reading. You're going to read them first like we would at school, right? You read the question and we're going to read the clues before we read the text. Then you're going to keep those really fresh in your head while you're actually reading the new chapter, because what you're looking for then is the evidence that relates to that prompt and clue that I gave you. So while you're reading, you're thinking about the clue and looking for text evidence that relates to it. So let me show you what I mean. Again, I'm showing you examples from chapter 6, and then you're going to try it with the new chapter today, chapter 7. So you're going to watch this lesson, then you're going to read chapter 7, and thinking about your new focus clue to look for this evidence. So let me show you what I mean. Prompt or clue number 1. This chapter, so chapter 6, had one part that really showed evidence of Peter changing. So the really important words right here are that Peter changes in chapter 6. Again, I would read this before I read chapter 6, and I would get this in my mind. So I'm like going to chapter 6, and I'm thinking, so chapter 6 was Fang hits town. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to read this chapter now, and while I'm reading, I'm really looking for a part that shows Peter changing. And then the directions are to find it, highlight it, and talk about it. So in the student template, I'm going to include the whole chapter 7 so that once you read it and find the clue, you can go back, flip through the template by pressing the arrows that look like this, right? And you're going to use then the highlight tool to highlight your text evidence right on here, and then you'll talk about it and submit it. So again, this chapter had one part that really showed evidence of Peter changing. Find it, highlight it, and talk about it. So while I read chapter 6, I was really thinking, how is Peter changing? We know that throughout the whole story, his main problem has been that his brother Fudge is just a problem, right? He's always like ruining his things. He's always bothering him. He's always acting out, causing chaos, all those kinds of things. So that's been throughout Peter's whole journey. That's really been a big problem for him. So I'm looking for something in this chapter that really shows that maybe Peter changed by thinking of his brother in a new way. So maybe he was thinking of him as not annoying for a change. That's what I was looking for as I read chapter 6. So now I'm going to show you, right? And I was reading. I can't show you how I read through the whole thing and went through all the pages. I'm going to show you where I landed, though, where I decided that this part definitely matched the clue. So I found the text evidence. So I'm going to reread this part to you. You can follow along with me on the screen. And then I'm going to highlight the part that I think shows that Peter changed. So let's just start reading right here. And then I will highlight. What kind do you want, Fudge? So pausing right here. This is where they're in the shoe store, right, in chapter 6. And Fudge won't decide on a pair of shoes. So his mom is talking to him saying that he has to get a pair of shoes. What kind do you want, Fudge? Because we're not leaving here until you have new shoes, my mother said like she meant it. I figured we'd be there for the rest of the day, or maybe the week. How could my mother have been embarrassed over a little hole in my sock and then act like nothing much was happening when her other son was on the floor yelling and screaming and carrying on? So stopping and thinking, so far, this seems to fit with Fudge annoying Peter and thinking that he's not treated fairly, right? So it's nothing new yet. So I'm still looking for that change. I'm going to count to 3, my mother told Fudge, and then I want you to tell me which shoes you want. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Fudge sat up. Like Pita's, he said. I smiled. I guess the kid really looks up to me. He even wants to wear the same kind of shoes. But everybody knows you can't buy loafers for such a little guy. They don't come in your size, Mr. Berman told Fudge. Yes, like Pita's, Fudge hollered. So we're going to stop right there. We're going to go back and we're going to read this part again. I smiled. I guess the kid really looks up to me. He even wants to wear the same kind of shoes. So this part is super important, so I highlighted it, right? So the directions are to find it, I found it, highlight it, and now I'm going to talk about it, right? So thinking back, the prompt and the clue was this chapter had one part that really showed evidence of Peter changing, find it, highlight it, and talk about it. So I think that this part shows that Peter changed because something that his brother did made him smile. And now he's having happy thoughts about his brother, where he normally is only angered by his brother. So he's realizing that because his brother wants the same kind of shoes as him, he wants to be like him and he looks up to him. So that's a good feeling as an older sibling. So for once, this part shows that Peter is kind of seeing where his brother is coming from and kind of happy because of something that he did. So for that reason, this part is text evidence that definitely shows a change in Peter. Okay, so now you're going to try it with me since I did it once fully through and I showed you how to do all of the steps. So now we're going to try it together. That's going to involve some of the pausing of the video, right? So the first step is to read the clue and keep it in your head. Then the second step is to read the text with that clue in your head, looking for evidence that matches the clue, right? So here is our second clue that we're going to try together now. In chapter 6, so we're still in chapter 6, there are two parts where Fudge is tricked. Find one, highlight it, talk about it. So what we're going to do, I've kind of made this a little easier for you because the text evidence is on this page right here. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to look for a part on these pages that show Fudge being tricked. And then we'll come back together and I'll highlight it, but ideally you're highlighting it. You could trace it on the screen with your finger. Definitely while your video is paused, talk about it and explain why this part shows Fudge being tricked. And then you can compare your thinking to mine and see if you got it right. So I'll read it out loud. I'll say pause and you will pause the video. And then you will find the part that shows Fudge being tricked. You'll talk about it to yourself or somebody that's there with you. And then you'll check to see if we have the same thinking. Then it'll be your turn to try it totally on your own. So the clue we have in our heads again. In chapter 6, there are two parts where Fudge is tricked. Find one, highlight it, talk about it. So while I read this, you're looking for one part where Fudge is tricked. And we're going to start right here. Oh, not much. Dr. Brown just wants you to show Fudge how you open your mouth and how he checks your teeth. What do I have to do that for? I asked. I don't need a checkup yet. I just had one last month. Your brother won't open his mouth this morning, the nurse whispered. He won't? I whispered back. No, he won't, she said again. I thought that was pretty funny. I never considered refusing to open my mouth at the dentist's office. When he says open, I open. When we reached the examining room, Fudge was sitting in the big chair. He had a towel around his neck and he looked all ready for action. Dr. Brown was showing him lots of little things and explaining what he does with each one. Fudge kept nodding, but he wouldn't open his mouth. Ah, Peter, Dr. Brown said when he saw me, would you open your mouth so I can count your teeth? That's what he tells little kids he's doing, counting their teeth. Little kids will believe anything. I went along with Dr. Brown's joke. I opened my mouth very wide, much wider than when I'm the real patient. He put his mirror in and said, wonderful teeth, just beautiful. A regular chip off the old block. Such a shame your brother can't open his mouth the way you do. Can so, Fudge said. No, Dr. Brown told him. You can't open your mouth nearly as good as Peter. Can so. See? Fudge opened his mouth. No, I'm sorry, Fudge, Dr. Brown said. Still not as good as Peter. So Fudge opened his mouth really wide. Count teeth, he said. Count Fudgy's teeth. Well, Dr. Brown pretended to think about it. Count, Fudge shouted. Well, Dr. Brown said again, scratching his head. I guess as long as you're here, I might as well count your teeth. So he checked Fudge's mouth. When he was through, Fudge said, see, just like Peter. Yes, Dr. Brown said, smiling. I can see that. You're just like Peter. He gave me a wink. I liked the way Dr. Brown tricked Fudge into opening his mouth. So when he was through examining him, I whispered, couldn't you make Fudge some false teeth until his grown-up ones come in? So now you're going to pause this video on YouTube, click the pause button, and I want you to go back and look through the words and find text evidence. So just like we highlighted on the slide before, evidence to match the first clue, trace with your finger, like an air highlighter. What would you highlight to show Fudge being tricked? Once you've decided what you would highlight, I want you to just talk about it. So you could talk out loud with yourself, think about it in your head, talk to somebody that you have near you, and explain, how does this part show Fudge being tricked? After you've done all that, you can hit play again and then listen to me explain it and see if we had similar thinking. So ready? Press pause. Go. Okay, welcome back. So last time, our first clue, we only highlighted a couple lines to prove the text that showed the text evidence that matched our clue, right? But this time it's kind of like the whole part. So notice that I put these brackets right here because you could really argue that the whole part is text evidence that shows Fudge being tricked, right? It's like a big scene that describes Fudge being tricked. But then within the whole part that I bracketed, I highlighted specific sentences that really showed the trick. So in this part, Fudge is tricked by the dentist using Peter, and the way that they trick him is they have Peter open his mouth, and then they say, I bet you can't do that, right? So now I'm doing the talk about it part. And the reason why they did that is because the dentist needs to see Fudge's teeth. He won't open his mouth. So they're kind of challenging him, right? Saying that they know he wants to be like his brother, and if his brother did something, they're saying, you can't do it. So now he wants to prove to them that he could do it and be like his brother. So by using Peter, he tricked Fudge, the dentist tricked Fudge into opening his mouth, and then he was able to work on his teeth, right? So again, this whole part, you could argue, shows that. So I bracketed the whole thing. It doesn't make sense to highlight every single line. And then I went back and really picked out some important parts, like show Fudge how you open your mouth and how he checks your teeth, because that shows the trick of opening the mouth. And the word down here, Dr. Brown tricked Fudge into opening his mouth. Again, that really clearly shows what happened. So pause this video again and take a second to reflect. Was your thinking, when you practiced it and you tried it with me, was your thinking similar to what I just explained to you? And then how can we kind of align our thinking and get together on the same page so that you're really ready to try it on your own? Okay, so now that I've showed you, we've done it together, how to do the text evidence scavenger hunt, it's your turn. So this is your prompt. Remember, both of the examples that we did together were chapter 6. You're doing an example from chapter 7. So after this video is over, you're going to go back into Seesaw. You are going to look at the student template. So you're going to read this question first. This is your clue. This is what you're keeping in mind as you are reading chapter 7. This is what you're looking for text evidence to match. So I'm going to read this to you, and then you'll read chapter 7 and look for that text evidence. And the activity then, the student template you'll edit to submit, will be finding the text evidence that matches this clue. You'll find it, highlight it, and then you'll talk about it. So explain, why did you pick that? Why does it show and match with this clue? So your next clue in your challenge is, in chapter 7, Peter, Sheila, and Jimmy have to work on a group project together. Sheila is very bossy, so there's a lot of parts where she's bossy. I want to challenge you to find the part that shows her being the most bossy. So I thought that there was one part where she was more bossy than the other parts. I want to see if you can find that part. Then once you find it, you're going to highlight it, and then you'll record yourself talking about it on the highlighted page. Hope you guys have fun with this. Can't wait to see if you find it.